Welcome to my channel 24/7 English. Today's lesson is about something very special for English learner. Let me tell you this. You're not someone struggling with English. Many learners around the world feel the same way, frustrated by slow progress, overwhelmed by grammar rules, and discouraged by fear of making mistakes. Some even feel burned out, wondering if fluency is ever truly within reach. But what if the problem isn't your ability, but your mindset? What if you could train your brain to be your greatest ally in learning English? In this video, we'll explore how the power of mindfulness can help you break through these emotional barriers and unlock your potential as a confident English speaker. Imagine learning English without the constant stress that clouds your mind. No more second-guessing yourself when speaking. No more anxiety before every conversation. And no more feeling like you're falling behind. Mindfulness can help you shift from self-doubt to self-belief. It teaches you to be present, to focus on the task at hand without judgment, and to accept mistakes as part of growth. When you practice mindfulness, your brain becomes calmer and more open to learning. You absorb vocabulary faster, retain grammar rules better, and most importantly, you stay motivated even when progress feels slow. One simple technique is mindful breathing. Before you begin your study session, pause for just 2 minutes. Close your eyes and take deep, slow breaths. Let your thoughts settle. This clears your mental clutter and prepares your brain to focus. Another method is mindful listening. Choose a short English podcast or video and listen without trying to understand every word. Focus only on the rhythm, the intonation, the pauses. This builds your listening awareness and reduces the pressure to be perfect. Over time, your understanding will grow naturally. You can also use mindfulness when speaking. Instead of obsessing over grammar mid-sentence, focus on expressing your thoughts clearly. Speak slowly. Breathe. Smile. Allow yourself to be human. Fluency isn't about being flawless. It's about being connected, present, and engaged. Mindfulness helps you stay in that space where real learning happens. So, the next time you feel overwhelmed, remember, you're not failing, you're just learning. And with mindfulness as your tool, you can turn struggle into strength and fear into fluency. Start practicing today and watch your English journey transform from stressful to empowering. Chapter 1. The struggle is real. English learning challenges. Learning English is not just about memorizing vocabulary or passing a grammar test. It's an emotional journey filled with highs and lows. And if you've ever struggled with it, trust me, you're not alone. I still remember my early days of learning English. I was in school, sitting quietly at the back of the class, too scared to raise my hand, even when I knew the answer. Why? Because I was terrified I'd pronounce something wrong or say the sentence in the wrong order. That fear of embarrassment held me back more than I realized. One particular moment still sticks with me. I had just learned a few new words and was feeling brave enough to try them out in class. When the teacher asked for a volunteer, I raised my hand and shared my answer. But I mixed up 2 words, and a few students laughed. I know they didn't mean any harm, but that one moment haunted me for months. Every time I wanted to speak up after that, my mind reminded me of that tiny mistake. That's the thing with language learning. It's not just intellectual, it's deeply emotional. Each mistake can feel like a personal failure, even though it's actually a necessary part of progress. And this is just my story. Across the world, millions of English learners are facing the same struggles. Grammar is one of the biggest hurdles. There are so many confusing rules, exceptions to those rules, and then exceptions to the exceptions. Take tenses, for example. When do you use past perfect instead of simple past? Why is I had eaten different from I ate? These questions can make your head spin. And even when you finally understand the rules on paper, applying them while speaking is a whole different challenge. Then comes pronunciation. English isn't a phonetic language, which means words are often not pronounced the way they're spelled. A classic example is though, through, tough, and thought. They all look similar, but sound completely different. And don't even get me started on silent letters. How are learners supposed to guess that the K in night or the B in thumb is silent? This makes reading and speaking nerve-wracking, especially when you're not sure if you're saying the word right. The fear of sounding wrong often makes people avoid speaking altogether, which only slows their progress. Vocabulary is another huge challenge. English has one of the largest vocabularies of any language. There are often 10 different ways to say the same thing, and each one carries a slightly different meaning or tone. You might learn the word big, but then you hear huge, enormous, massive, or gigantic. Are they all the same? When should you use which one? It's overwhelming. And worse, if you use the wrong word in the wrong context, people may misunderstand you, or worse, laugh or correct you harshly. This pressure makes many learners overly cautious, leading to hesitation and loss of confidence. Speaking of confidence, this is where most learners struggle the most. You may be able to read and write fairly well, but when it comes to having a real conversation, the anxiety kicks in. You start second-guessing your sentence structure, your vocabulary, even your accent. That fear of judgment can be paralyzing. And when you compare yourself to native speakers or fluent friends, the self-doubt grows even stronger. You begin to wonder, am I smart enough? Will I ever be fluent? These thoughts quietly eat away at your motivation. Unfortunately, all these challenges take a toll on your progress. The more frustrated you feel, the more likely you are to quit or stop putting in effort. Learning a language is like climbing a mountain. You have to keep going, even when it gets steep. But if every step feels like a struggle, it's hard to stay committed. Many learners experience burnout. They start strong, with energy and excitement, but then hit a wall. Their progress slows down, and they begin to feel stuck. The joy of learning turns into a daily stressor. I've been there. There were weeks when I didn't open my English books at all, just because I was tired of trying and failing. I thought, what's the point? I couldn't see my improvement, so I assumed I wasn't making any. But looking back now, I realize I was growing in small ways, understanding more words, noticing grammar patterns, gaining listening skills. Progress in language learning isn't always visible day by day. Sometimes it's only when you look back after months that you realize how far you've come. It's also important to understand that everyone's journey is different. Some people are good at grammar but struggle with speaking. Others are confident speakers but make writing errors. There's no one-size-fits-all path to fluency. Comparing yourself to others only adds unnecessary pressure. Instead, it's more helpful to track your own journey and celebrate small wins. Did you understand a podcast without subtitles today? Great. Were you able to order food in English without freezing? That's progress. These moments matter, and they build your confidence over time. Another overlooked factor is the environment you're learning in. If your teachers or peers are too critical, you might feel scared to try. If your learning materials are boring or too difficult, you'll lose interest. If you don't have opportunities to use English in real life, your learning feels disconnected from your goals. These external factors shape how successful your learning experience will be. That's why it's important to create a supportive environment, watch content you enjoy, talk to people who encourage you, and use methods that suit your learning style. Sometimes, even just having someone tell you that your struggles are normal can make a huge difference. I want you to know that feeling stuck or frustrated doesn't mean you're bad at English. It means you're learning. Every fluent speaker you admire once stumbled over the same words. They also doubted themselves, but they kept going. And so can you. In the end, the struggle is very real. English learning is not just about words and rules, it's about persistence, courage, and emotional strength. You will face confusion, embarrassment, and fear. But you'll also discover moments of clarity, connection, and confidence. You'll laugh at your old mistakes and be proud of how far you've come. And most importantly, you'll realize that fluency isn't just a destination. It's a journey, one step at a time. So if you're struggling right now, take a deep breath. You're not failing. You're just in the middle of your story. Keep going and remember, you are not alone. Millions of others are walking this same path, and with time, effort, and a little bit of patience, you'll get there too. Chapter 2: Mindfulness, a powerful tool for language learning. But what truly changed everything for me was discovering mindfulness. Not as a buzzword or something only for meditation gurus, but as a real, practical tool that fit perfectly into my language learning journey. Mindfulness, at its core, is the practice of being fully present in the current moment, with openness and without judgment. It's not about emptying your mind or forcing yourself to stop thinking. It's about noticing what's happening around you and within you, and simply allowing it to be. When applied to language learning, this becomes incredibly powerful. Instead of obsessing over every mistake or fearing how you'll sound, mindfulness trains your brain to observe these thoughts without letting them control you. You still recognize that you mispronounced a word, but you don't spiral into self-doubt because of it. You acknowledge it, breathe, and move forward. One of the core principles of mindfulness is non-judgment, and this principle alone can transform your entire learning experience. Think about how often we criticize ourselves when learning a new language. I'll never be fluent. I sound stupid. Why can't I remember this word? These aren't just random thoughts, they're judgments, and they create tension, stress, and shame. But when you practice mindfulness, you begin to notice these judgments as just thoughts, not facts. You learn to treat them like clouds passing through the sky. They come, you observe them, and then they go. This allows you to shift from a self-critical mindset to one that is more curious and compassionate. And when you stop attacking yourself mentally, your brain becomes a safer space for learning. Mindfulness also encourages presence. So much of our stress in learning English or any language comes from being stuck in either the past or the future. We think about the last time we made a mistake, or we worry about how we'll sound in tomorrow's interview or conversation. Rarely are we focused on the now, the word we're reading, the sentence we're writing, the video we're listening to. But language, like music, happens in real time. If you're not mentally present, you miss the rhythm, the flow, the subtle meanings. Mindfulness brings you back to this moment. When you study vocabulary with presence, you retain it better. When you speak with presence, you connect more deeply, not just with the words, but with the people around you. For me, the first time I tried applying mindfulness to English learning was during a listening exercise. Normally, I'd try to understand every single word and panic if I missed one. But this time, I just sat, took a deep breath, and allowed the words to wash over me. I didn't pause the audio. I didn't rewind. I just listened with curiosity. And something surprising happened. I actually understood more. Not because I was focusing harder, but because I had relaxed my grip on control. My brain was free to absorb rather than panic. That's the magic of mindfulness. It quiets the noise in your head, allowing space for real learning to happen. Stress and anxiety are two of the biggest blockers in language learning. You can have the best books, teachers, and apps, but if your brain is tense, nothing sticks. And the truth is, many learners live in a constant state of low-level anxiety every time they use English. The fear of being judged, the pressure to be fluent, the frustration with slow progress, it all builds up and creates a heavy emotional burden. Mindfulness offers a way to release that burden. Just by taking a few deep breaths before you study, or pausing for a moment when you feel overwhelmed, you tell your nervous system, "It's okay. I'm safe. I can handle this." This shift in your body calms your mind, which in turn makes learning easier and more enjoyable. Another unexpected benefit of mindfulness is increased self-awareness. When you practice observing your thoughts and feelings without reacting, you begin to notice patterns. Maybe you always get anxious when speaking to native speakers. Or maybe you lose focus after 20 minutes of studying. These insights aren't flaws. They're information. Mindfulness helps you use that information to adjust your learning habits. Maybe you start taking shorter study sessions. Maybe you give yourself permission to speak slowly. Maybe you learn to smile through mistakes rather than hide from them. In this way, mindfulness doesn't just make you a better learner, it makes you a wiser one. One exercise that really helped me was mindful speaking. Instead of trying to sound perfect, I would slow down, breathe, and focus on the message I wanted to share. I stopped worrying about grammar in the middle of a sentence and started focusing on connection. I'd say things like, "I don't know the exact word for this, but it's like," and then describe it. And you know what? People understood me. Sometimes they even helped me find the right word. That gave me confidence, and that confidence kept me going. The more I practiced mindfulness, the more I realized that fluency isn't about speed or perfection. It's about presence and connection. Even writing became more mindful. I used to stare at the screen, frozen by the fear of making mistakes. Now I begin each writing session with a minute of breathing. I remind myself, this doesn't have to be perfect. This is practice. I'm allowed to learn. With that mindset, writing becomes less about pressure and more about expression. And slowly, my writing improved, not just technically, but in clarity and voice. I was finally writing like me. For anyone learning English right now, I want to say this clearly. You don't have to suffer through it. You can be kind to yourself while you learn. You can accept the struggle without letting it defeat you. You can practice small moments of mindfulness that bring big changes over time. Try starting your next study session with 2 minutes of deep breathing. Or when you catch yourself feeling frustrated, pause and ask, what do I need right now? Rest, support, or just a break? This is not weakness. This is emotional intelligence, and it's a superpower in language learning. It's easy to think that language is only about intellect, memorizing, repeating, practicing, but it's also about emotion. It's about confidence, resilience, and curiosity. Mindfulness nurtures all of that. It's the bridge between your brain and your heart, allowing both to work together. And when they do, learning becomes more than just a task. It becomes a part of your life. You don't just study English. You live it. You feel it. You grow with it. Looking back now, I don't regret the struggles I went through. They taught me compassion. They helped me understand what other learners feel. And they made me appreciate the journey in a way I never would have if it had been easy. But I do wish I had discovered mindfulness sooner. It would have saved me so much unnecessary stress. That's why I'm sharing it with you now, because maybe, just maybe, it will help you the way it helped me. So, as you continue your English journey, remember this. You are not your mistakes. You are not your slow progress. You are not behind. You are learning. You are growing. And with mindfulness by your side, every step, no matter how small, is a step in the right direction. Chapter 3. Mindful Techniques for English Learners. After realizing how mindfulness could transform the way I approached English, I started exploring practical ways to bring it into my daily learning routine. The first thing I tried was a simple, guided meditation, something I never thought I'd use for language learning. But the goal wasn't to magically make me fluent. It was to calm the frustration that had built up inside me. I found a short, 5-minute English language meditation video on YouTube. The voice was slow and soothing, encouraging me to focus on my breath and let go of all expectations. At first, I was restless. My mind kept jumping from yesterday's grammar mistake to tomorrow's vocabulary quiz. But as I kept practicing every morning, I noticed something strange. I was becoming less irritated by my slow progress. I was more focused. My thoughts were clearer, and even when I made a mistake, I didn't feel the same sharp sting of failure. It was as if I had built a small mental shield that protected me from frustration. This daily practice of just sitting, breathing, and listening helped reset my brain before every study session. If you've never done guided meditation before, start small. Choose a quiet space, sit comfortably, close your eyes, and focus on a calm voice guiding you to simply be. There's no pressure to do it perfectly. You don't even need to understand every word the speaker says. Just follow the rhythm, the tone, the pace. In fact, it becomes a mindful language practice in itself. You're improving your listening skills while training your mind to stay calm and open. Over time, this gentle habit boosts your attention span and makes learning English feel less like a chore and more like self-care. Another technique that became my anchor was mindful breathing. Unlike guided meditation, which often involves longer sessions, mindful breathing can be done anywhere, anytime, even in the middle of a stressful conversation or before an English presentation. All it takes is 1 minute. Inhale deeply for 4 counts, hold for 4 counts, and exhale slowly for 4 counts. Do this 3 or 4 times. What you're doing here is telling your body and brain, I'm safe, I'm in control. This has a direct impact on anxiety, especially language-related anxiety, which can freeze your thoughts or make you forget even the simplest words. I remember using this just before my first English speaking exam. My hands were shaking. My mind was blank. I excused myself, went to a quiet corner, and took those deep, focused breaths. My heart slowed. My hands steadied. And when I walked back in, I was still nervous, but I wasn't panicking. I spoke slower, clearer, and more confidently. I was still making mistakes, but I wasn't drowning in them. That small breathing ritual helped me show up as the best version of myself in that moment. And it's something I still use today, before presentations, interviews, or even tough conversations. Now, perhaps the most impactful change I made was turning my regular language practice into mindful language practice. This means engaging with the language in a way that's intentional and fully present. Let's start with pronunciation. Instead of rushing to repeat phrases, I slowed down and listened deeply. I would choose a single sentence from a podcast or movie, close my eyes, and play it 3 or 4 times. I paid close attention to the rise and fall of the speaker's tone, where they paused, how they stressed certain syllables. Then I'd mimic it, not just the words, but the emotion behind it. This mindful repetition helped me not only sound more natural, but also understand the feeling behind the language. I also became more mindful about learning vocabulary. Instead of memorizing long word lists that never stuck, I chose 5 new words per week. But I didn't just read them. I used them in a sentence that related to me. For example, instead of writing ambitious means having a strong desire to succeed, I wrote, I'm ambitious about becoming fluent in English and studying abroad. This personalization made the words stick because they meant something to me. Every time I reviewed the words, I paused, closed my eyes, and repeated the sentences slowly, letting the meaning settle in my body, not just my brain. Grammar was another area where mindfulness became surprisingly helpful. Before, I would study rules quickly, trying to memorize everything. But mindful grammar study is different. I focused on one rule at a time. I didn't just read the rule, I read why it works, when it's used, and I created my own examples. I'd say them out loud slowly, feeling where the rule fits in my natural speech. Instead of thinking, I need to master all tenses this month, I'd say, today, I'm just practicing the present perfect in casual sentences. This slower, focused method reduced overwhelm and helped me actually retain what I learned. It's like watering a plant a little every day instead of dumping a whole bucket on it once a week. Mindful listening also played a huge role. When watching a movie or listening to a podcast, I used to multitask, checking my phone, replying to messages, or thinking about my to-do list. But when I started practicing mindful listening, I made a rule: one thing at a time. I turned off distractions, sat comfortably, and gave my full attention to the audio. I didn't pause every second or translate everything. I just listened, really listened. Sometimes I'd close my eyes to enhance focus. I paid attention to the mood, the tone, and even the silence. It felt like I was finally hearing English, not just decoding it. My understanding deepened, and my ears became more sensitive to natural patterns. Then came mindful speaking practice, which was the hardest, but most rewarding. Instead of rushing to say a perfect sentence, I learned to speak slowly, breathing between phrases. I'd talk to myself in English while cooking, walking, or journaling out loud. I'd focus on expressing a thought, not on perfection. For example, if I forgot a word, I'd describe it instead of freezing. It's the thing you use to cook rice. It has steam. Ah, rice cooker. This practice of staying present and flexible taught me that fluency isn't about knowing every word. It's about being able to communicate clearly with what you do know. Even in conversation with others, mindfulness helped me slow down and listen. I stopped planning my reply while the other person was speaking. I focused on truly understanding them first. That simple shift made my responses more natural, and surprisingly, I made fewer grammar mistakes because I wasn't rushing. I was connecting, and that's the heart of language. Through all of these techniques, guided meditation, mindful breathing, mindful pronunciation, vocabulary, grammar, listening, and speaking, I began to rebuild my relationship with English. I no longer saw it as a mountain to conquer, but as a journey to walk with awareness and self-kindness. My confidence grew, not because I was perfect, but because I had created a peaceful, supportive space inside myself where learning could truly happen. And that's the beauty of mindfulness. It doesn't promise instant results. It doesn't guarantee you'll never struggle again. But it does give you the mental strength to face challenges with calm and curiosity. It replaces panic with presence, self-judgment with self-compassion, and confusion with clarity. It teaches you that every mispronounced word, every forgotten rule, every awkward sentence is not a sign of failure, but a moment to pause, breathe, and try again, more aware than before. So as you move forward in your English journey, ask yourself not just, what am I learning, but how am I learning? Are you rushing through? Are you punishing yourself for small errors? Or are you breathing, observing, and allowing space for growth? Choose mindfulness. It's not just a tool, it's a companion that will walk beside you, one calm, intentional step at a time. Chapter 4. From Frustration to Flow. Embracing the Learning Journey. Once I began applying mindfulness consistently in my English learning, I noticed a quiet but powerful shift. The frustration that once defined my experience started to soften. I no longer treated mistakes like failures or signs of inadequacy. Instead, I began to see them as part of the journey, important, necessary, even valuable. There was one day in particular that marked a turning point for me. I was practicing a phone conversation with a language partner. Normally, phone calls would terrify me, especially in English. Without facial expressions or gestures to rely on, I always felt lost. But this time, I prepared myself differently. I did a few mindful breathing cycles, reminded myself to stay present, and set one simple goal: to stay calm and connected, even if I messed up. And I did mess up. I forgot a word mid-sentence, stumbled through a verb tense, and had to repeat myself twice. But something new happened. I didn't spiral. I didn't feel embarrassed. I just paused, laughed a little, and kept going. My partner was kind and supportive, and that made the moment even more meaningful. For the first time, I felt flow. I wasn't obsessing over every error. I wasn't waiting to be corrected. I was just in the conversation. That feeling, the ease, the fluidity, it wasn't because I had become perfect. It was because I had become present. That's the magic mindfulness brings. It doesn't erase your mistakes. It rewires how you experience them. Instead of saying, I'm so bad at this, you start thinking, that's interesting. I didn't know that before. Instead of cringing at every grammar error, you begin asking yourself, what can I learn from this moment? These small changes in internal dialogue are more powerful than any textbook. They transform how you show up to each lesson, each conversation, each challenge. I used to fear speaking in public or even introducing myself in a group. I'd rehearse the sentence in my head 10 times, worrying about pronunciation or verb agreement. Now I still prepare, but with intention, not panic. If I forget a word, I breathe. If I mispronounce something, I smile and try again. These moments used to feel like failures. Now they feel like progress. And that mindset shift makes all the difference. One of the most healing realizations I had was that setbacks are not signs of failure. They're proof that you're trying. I remember working hard on an essay for my English class. I used advanced vocabulary, double-checked my grammar, and thought I had done really well. But when I got it back, the teacher had marked many corrections. I felt crushed at first, but then I paused, took a few mindful breaths, and reread the comments. Instead of reacting emotionally, I asked myself, what is this teaching me? I noticed patterns in my mistakes, things I hadn't seen before. That single experience taught me more than weeks of passive studying. Why? Because I allowed the setback to become a stepping stone. I leaned into the discomfort rather than running from it. Mindfulness teaches us to meet each challenge not with fear, but with curiosity. It allows us to say, okay, this is hard, but it's also an opportunity. And when you start looking at mistakes through that lens, you'll be amazed at how quickly they lose their power over you. Instead of avoiding your weak points, you begin to explore them. And every time you face them head-on, you grow. Another game-changing habit I developed was celebrating small victories. I used to wait for big milestones, like passing an exam or completing a course, before I allowed myself to feel proud. But mindfulness helped me recognize that growth happens in tiny, often invisible steps. The day I understood a podcast without subtitles, I celebrated. The time I asked a stranger for directions in English, and they understood me, I wrote it in my journal as a win. Even on the days when I simply showed up to practice, even if I felt tired or discouraged, I counted that as progress. This shift changed everything. When you start valuing the little wins, your motivation becomes more stable. You stop feeling like fluency is a faraway mountain, and instead realize you're already climbing it, step by step. Each word you learn, each sentence you say, each fear you face is a brick in the foundation of your success. And the more you acknowledge that, the more confident and motivated you become. Mindfulness also taught me to let go of comparison. I used to look at others, classmates, YouTubers, native speakers, and feel like I was always behind. But every learner's path is different. Just because someone else speaks faster or uses complex grammar doesn't mean your journey is any less valid. When I stopped measuring my worth by someone else's progress, I started focusing more on my own growth. That's when I began to flourish. Now, don't get me wrong, there are still hard days. Days when I forget words I've known for months. Days when my accent feels too thick or my sentences come out all wrong. But I've learned to welcome those days too, because they remind me I'm still learning, still evolving, and that's something to be proud of. In fact, some of my best learning has come from what used to be my worst moments. The time I accidentally said something inappropriate in a conversation because I misunderstood the meaning. Embarrassing, but unforgettable. I never made that mistake again. The day I tried to give a class presentation and froze halfway through. Terrifying. But now I rehearse smarter and stay grounded with breathing techniques. Each failure left behind a lesson. Each uncomfortable experience shaped me into a stronger, more mindful learner. The key is not to avoid these moments, but to meet them with awareness and grace. That's what mindfulness does. It gives you the space between stimulus and reaction, the space to breathe, to reflect, to choose your next step, instead of defaulting to shame or self-doubt. It's in that space where real growth happens. So, if you're in the thick of your English journey right now, feeling stuck, overwhelmed, or not good enough, I want to remind you, you're doing better than you think. Every time you choose to keep going, even when it's hard, you're building fluency. Every time you pause and breathe through frustration, you're growing resilience. And every time you celebrate a small victory, you're reinforcing your belief in yourself. Embrace the journey, not just the destination. You don't need to speak perfect English to be proud of yourself. You just need to show up, be present, and keep learning. Let your mistakes guide you. Let your challenges shape you. And let your victories, no matter how small, remind you of how far you've come. Because in the end, fluency isn't a finish line. It's a relationship with a language, with the world, and with yourself. And when you learn to walk that path mindfully, with curiosity, kindness, and patience, you discover that the real reward isn't just speaking English well. It's becoming the kind of person who knows how to grow, how to adapt, and how to thrive, no matter what. So keep going, keep breathing, keep believing. The struggle is part of the story, but so is the strength you're building. And every word you learn, every sentence you speak, is a reminder you are becoming. Chapter 5. Mindfulness for a more effective learning experience. After I began embracing the journey with mindfulness, not just surviving it, but growing through it, I started to notice something else, something deeper. My memory was improving. Words I used to forget were sticking. Grammar rules I always confused were making more sense. It wasn't that I was suddenly studying harder or longer. It was that I was learning differently. I had unknowingly started engaging my brain in a way that made it more receptive. And that's when I began researching how mindfulness actually impacts memory and learning capacity. And what I found completely validated my experience. You see, mindfulness is more than just a calming tool. Scientifically, it enhances how your brain processes and stores information. When you're mindful, you activate regions in the brain responsible for attention regulation, emotional control, and working memory, especially the prefrontal cortex and hippocampus. In simpler terms, mindfulness doesn't just make you feel better. It literally sharpens your brain's ability to learn. When you study English mindfully, you're not just going through the motions, you're allowing the knowledge to sink deeper, form stronger connections, and stay with you longer. I noticed this especially with vocabulary. Before, I would cram word lists the night before a test and forget half of them the next day. But once I began applying mindfulness to my study sessions, I realized I didn't need to study more. I just needed to study better. I would pick 5 words, take a deep breath, and really see each word. I'd pronounce it slowly, imagine how it's used in a real-life sentence, and picture myself saying it in conversation. I wasn't just memorizing anymore. I was embodying the word. And surprisingly, I remembered it much longer. That same focus began to affect my grammar retention too. I no longer skimmed over rules trying to just get through them. I slowed down. I took each rule like a puzzle and tried to see where it fit in the bigger picture. For example, I used to mix up present perfect and past simple all the time. But one day I sat down, breathed deeply, and gave myself permission to understand it without rushing. I wrote down examples, said them out loud, created personal sentences, and stayed present the whole time. Suddenly, it clicked. Not instantly, not magically, but clearly. And that clarity stuck. Focus, I realized, was everything. And mindfulness trains focus like a muscle. Our modern lives are full of distractions, phones, notifications, multitasking, constant noise. When we study in that state, our brain is only half engaged. It's like trying to fill a leaky bucket. But when you practice mindfulness, even for just 5 minutes before studying, you're telling your brain, now,